Company. Look at here, Josh. This couch opens up into a bed. It's got a refrigerator. It's got a stove. There's running water, propane. That's the attack dog.
Morning, Bob.
How you doing, buddy?
Good.
Guys.
My name's Bob Schober. Welcome to Redemption's Blueprint. I'm here with Isaac Vallie-Flagg, former UFC fighter and current general manager for Interstate Roofing out of Albuquerque, New Mexico.
How's it going, man?
Going well.
Good.
Isaac's going to give us a little bit of his journey for Redemption's Blueprint. Had the same struggles as a lot of us, and kind of worked through all that and talk about what happened, what it was like, and what it's like now. So I'm just meeting Isaac yesterday for the first time. Welcome to my humble abode. In all reality, back in the day when I was not in such good spiritual space, this was my home. So kind of come full circle in how I used to live versus how I live today, but I lived in one of these for about a year. Everywhere from Santa Cruz, California to Portland, Maine, and I was really good at like painting this picture and extremely grandiose. So I lived in one of these. I was on food stamps in Santa Cruz. You had to draw a map to where you live, and I had this like really overprotective Italian mother who got an 800 number for me. She always wanted to know where I was at and how I was doing, so I would call her and I'd be like, "Mom, I'm living beachfront in California. Life is amazing. I hadn't eaten in days, and I'm selling food stamps for 50 cents on the dollar." And this is in the early 90s, but this is the essentially the old home. Except the one I had was a 77. This is a 97. But if you look in here, Josh, this couch opens up into a bed. It's got a refrigerator. It's got a stove. There's running water, propane. The top pops up. You can sleep 2 up top and 2 down here. And when I was living like this, it was me for a little bit while, a couple dogs, and that was the squad.
Really cool.
Kind of come full circle. It's my manifested plate. That's worked well in my life. I'm gonna go in here and we'll figure it out.
Hey, are you gonna steal my laptop?
I don't think I need to.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
That's fair. If I was, I probably would say no too.
Yeah.
Henry, Josh. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
What's up, Henry? How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you today?
Good. You getting educated at all?
A little bit.
Hey, Henry.
Yeah.
Henry, this is our production manager in New Mexico, Henry. Henry's a very intricate part of what we do, and probably I would fail and cry without him.
There you go.
It's been said that you're the songbird of your generation. You guys hungry at all? Or some Starbucks or something?
Yeah, whatever.
2 lunch, too.
So you gotta drive back.
No, you're driving.
Henry, have you ever driven a Maybach before?
I have not.
All right. The back is kind of where it's
Yeah, this is like
that's the
refrigerator.
no pressure, Henry.
Where do you want me to
You got
go?
a license, right?
Yeah, I got a license.
He drives a production truck all the time. You're safe.
Yeah, I'm not worried.
This is crazy.
So what, you want to hit up a lunch spot?
Yeah,
or
let's get lunch.
What are you thinking?
I love backyard taco.
Okay.
You guys know about that?
No.
Never been there.
If it's alright.
They got these in Minnesota, Henry?
Not in the truck. Interstate got me.
In 100 feet at the end of the road, turn right and then turn left.
You can put your seat back too.
Right. Yeah, figuring all
Isaac and I have plenty of room.
Yeah, this is pretty awesome.
Dude, I think in most cars people fight over shotgun, but the back is way better.
Now turn right and then turn left.
What do all these do?
I don't know, I never sat back here.
Oh, that's the screen.
Yep.
Onto North Extension then turn left. Now turn left onto
give it a
North
few years,
Extension then
I should never have one of these because I hate bumping it a lot.
This was a really, there was no thought into buying this car. I was heading to an AA meeting, and I was there like in Gilbert an hour early, and there was a Mercedes dealership on Gilbert Road, and I pulled in with the Ferrari, and I saw this sitting out front, and I was like, oh, that's beautiful. And dude, I'm 52 years old, and I'm getting in and out of this car
Tiny
that's 6
Ferrari.
inches off the ground, and it was fun to drive. But I said, let me take this for a test drive, and then they gave me a test drive, and I was like, I'm done. I love it. It's me. Take it.
This is,
Give you guys the full experience here. Hold on.
it's really disappointing that you just didn't get a Rolls Royce.
Felt like nobody understood me. Yeah. Product of the city, kept it solid like it should be. Yeah. Chances I ain't never take, we never saw what it could be. No way, no way. So many people call me fake, cause I took a step out. Hood baby took it farther than the south. I'm like, tell me where to go. Even in my high times, I be feeling low. Secrets deep inside, looking for answers, let me know. Pain in my eyes, vision blurry. Peace in my mind, don't worry. In need of direction. Tired of chasing perfection. Took a lot of L's on the road to redemption, and no exception. I need some clarity. Not begging for prosperity. I need some clarity. Open my eyes, Lord. Open my eyes, Lord. I'm sick and tired of being tired.
Is it the blue face or the?
No, it's the skeleton. The
Oh
open
God,
wound.
that's Jesus. That's gorgeous. This is. I want to start moving up into APs. I don't want to
Stop, crazy.
Dude, that is beautiful.
Yeah, I love it.
Can I put it on? Or?
Yeah, absolutely.
I really like rose gold a lot.
Yeah, I love rose gold. It's my favorite.
It's starting to be mine too. And luckily, all the precious metal stuff is kind of down right now. Whoops.
Way down. Opposite way. There.
Did you see the watch Tom Brady had?
Yeah.
Get it, Jacob and Company?
Well, that's like,
Looks good on you.
yeah. God damn it.
What if you just started running?
I was thinking about it. I was measuring out how far I could get. I know I could beat both you guys up.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been in a fight since
Yeah, yeah.
88.
But I'm trying to think how far I would get before the police would actually get me.
Bob would just send his dogs out.
Dude, that thing's gorgeous.
That would be the move right there.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here with Isaac Vallie-Flagg, who has his own awesome redemption story, which we're going to dive into today. Isaac is from Michigan and came up and ended up in the UFC and then ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous. And now he is the general manager and our partner in New Mexico for One Solutions. And he is running Albuquerque, New Mexico office. And we are certainly going to thrive there. And I'm excited to dive into the story.
Yeah, I'm excited to, I guess, tell it once again, you know?
Yeah.
So
how did you end up in Albuquerque?
So we had a friend, Scott Riopel, one of the other owners, had a friend who had lived in Michigan named Tate Fletcher, and he had moved out to New Mexico from Michigan, and Scott and I didn't have much going on, so we jumped in a car and headed across the country when we were young, and it seemed like a good idea. So, and kind of that's where we all kind of started, you know?
So you were in AA as a teenager?
Yeah.
I mean, my first meeting, I was 15.
So same, you know, I was already looking from a young age. I think I drank a little bit differently than everybody else, and you know, we all partied and hung out and stuff, and I would just try to keep the party going as long as I could, kind of a thing, you know. And started getting in car wrecks, and I had immediate consequences from when I was a teenager. You know, I don't do well with like long drawn out stuff. I like to crash and burn pretty quickly, and so even from a young age, that's what I started doing.
Yeah. So first meeting, teenager, you meet Scott. You got tell me how you end up from where? From there to Colorado?
No, so I met Scott, and we worked in bars together, and he was definitely somebody I looked up to as kind of like an older brother, and if you know Scott, he was a little bit rambunctious when he was younger, even when he was sober.
Rambunctious.
Oh yeah, he's still very rambunctious. I'm trying to keep it clean, but yeah, rambunctious is a good word, you know. And we ended up in New Mexico together in Santa Fe, and that's where Tate had moved out to after living in Michigan with his parents for a little bit, and we didn't have going on, so we just jumped in a car and decided we're going to go work for Scott or with Tate in a bar, and both of us were. Scott was sober, I was sober, working a program and stuff, and then as soon as I got to New Mexico, that all kind of stopped. I quit doing the things that I did to maintain my sobriety, which is kind of like, that's my, as the story goes, that's always my MO is an inkling of success or an inkling of doing the right thing, and I forget what got me there, and I start straying off the path. Like I see shiny things and I kind of go one way, you know. So
Shiny things are an easy distraction to get sucked into. There's no doubt about it. So then you went to New Mexico. You relapsed pretty quickly.
it took a couple years, but yeah, because I was still surrounded by sober people.
How old were you then?
I was 20, yeah, 19, and I turned 20 out in New Mexico, and I stayed sober just being around Tate and Scott long enough, and so, I always kind of knew that I should maintain this, but I never really, I knew someday I was going to drink again because I just had some issues when I was a kid, kind of a thing, and I was going to get right in my head, and then I was going to be able to drink, and so the more that I moved away from the program, the more that sounded like a good idea, and so eventually, obviously, the inevitable happened, and I drank and proved to myself almost immediately that I had no business doing that, but still didn't listen to that for a while. So it took, I think, multiple relapses, multiple times where I come in and feel better again, and then quit doing the stuff that I needed to do, quit being accountable to people around me, and I would just drink again, So that's kind of, like I said, that's the deal for me was any kind of moderate success, and I wasn't having much, but any kind of success was an excuse for me to go out and ruin my life again, So, and when I say ruin my life, I very quickly, I very quickly go from good to not good, to the point where I'm getting arrested and doing crazy and taking trips across the country when I shouldn't be, when I'm drunk. So
I think that's a common theme, right? You get to a place where you feel like I've arrived, right? And then, you stop doing everything, all the work that went into getting you there, you don't do it to keep yourself there.
yeah, that was the same thing with when I was fighting, my whole goal was to get to a destination instead of kind of like, again, paying attention during the process. So once I got to that destination, then it was like okay to kind of slack off,
How did you get into the UFC?
I was decent enough at fighting and surrounded with the right people and had the work ethic where even in an older age, what's considered an older age, I still worked my way into the UFC and then had the right connections, and I guess was tough enough and stupid enough to do it, That was the one thing, like we were just talking about, the obsessive mind that we all have, when I focus it on something healthy or seemingly healthy, I will take off in that direction as hard as I possibly can, It's one of the things that's kind of been the driving force for good and bad in my life, is that. And so I did that, and I got to the point where I had won some fights and I had beat some guys in a smaller organization that was owned by the UFC, and I had showed some promise, and when they folded that organization called Strikeforce into the UFC, I was one of the guys who was lucky enough to get the call up to the kind of the big leagues, So. And
Were you sober at that time?
yeah, ish. So sobriety, the other thing about my sobriety is I've always found ways to circumvent what would be considered completely sober, whether it was like because a doctor prescribed me something or because I was trying something new that wasn't necessarily alcohol. I was considering myself sober, and so I would still do pain pills because they were doctor prescribed, like to the point where if I had a tooth that hurt, I would get the tooth pulled so I could get pain pills, or if I hurt myself, then I definitely hurt a little bit more so I could get pain pills. So I was sober-ish, and sometimes I was, there was a couple years where I'd be clean, and then what I'd do is I'd use something, but I wouldn't consider it a relapse because I wasn't drinking, So I say sober-ish, and then once I got to the UFC, I hurt my back, and that's when I really kind of went down a bad spiral with the opiates as far as pain management turning into now recreation, into just full-on obsessiveness about it.
Probably hard to keep a successful UFC career when you have a habit like that.
Yeah, that was the one thing, like one of the fights that, so it helps, the pain pills start by helping you train better, and then they eventually become the thing that kind of destroy you. One of the fights that I'm most well known for, I was, we had to test for drugs, and I was 3 days into a dope kick when I had one of the fights that I'm known for the most with a guy named Takanori Gomi, and we had a 15-minute war, and I was sick the whole time. So it's definitely, I look back at it as what could I have done if I hadn't drank again or relapsed again,
Were you always a fighter, like in school as a kid?
I got into fights when I was a kid. I would say I was more of a who didn't know where I fit in, and I was very insecure and very scared, and I reacted a lot, That's the one thing, like even today I'm not a tough guy, I'm mentally tough, but like a lot of things that I've done in my life have been based out of fear of not having something fear of looking stupid, fear of not fitting in. So I did a lot of stuff. A lot of the fighting that I did when I was younger was fear-based or wanting to fit in with a group of guys that I thought were somebody to look up to, you know?
Yeah.
So
You started these smaller shows in New Mexico. You got noticed. And how old were you when you had your first UFC fight?
I was 34 when I made my debut in the UFC. So like I was definitely an old guy, you know.
Yeah.
They luckily matched me. I got to fight some other guys who I considered legends in the sport because they were old, you know, because they were old too. But they're guys who I looked up to, you know, who I really thought were some of the better fighters in my weight class coming up, you know. So they matched me with some older guys, and from the first fight, like I said, my first fight, that was my inkling of success. And then I hurt my back, and I really went down a spiral with the pain pills after that fight. And you can kind of watch where I was on a good win streak. I want to say I was like on a 10 or 11 fight win streak, and then all of a sudden you can just watch everything kind of fall off, you know. Again, it's the self-sabotage thing of getting a moniker of success and feeling either like I don't deserve it or let my ego gets in the way, and then I just and then I tank everything, you know.
Yeah. Are there any well-known fights out there with well-known names that maybe someone can look up and like, oh, I'm gonna look up this one of his fights,
Yeah.
see what kind of fighter he was?
So if you want to, you can look up fights. I have a fight with Yves Edwards, who was my first fight in the UFC, he's again considered a legend in the sport. Takanori Gomi, who was at one point thought of as one of the best fighters in the world. Again, that's kind of what I made a career off of, is fighting these guys who were considered some of the best guys in the world. And a couple of them I beat, and then I started losing to them right away. You know, I got to fight. I fought after I retired and after I got sober. I fought another guy named Melvin Gillard, bare knuckle boxing match, and so it's always a fun one to watch.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you remember what was your biggest paycheck from the UFC?
Yeah, that the Gomi fight was a good paycheck, and we got a fight of the night bonus, which at the time was like $50,000. So, you know, that was again, even though I lost that fight, that ended up being a good paycheck, and it was something that propelled my name a little bit more, because Gomi, I stood there in the pocket and just fought with Gomi, and that was like, he was known to knock people out, and I just wanted to go toe to toe with him. So that was that's always been my MO for fighting or anything in life. If you tell me I can't do it, then I'm gonna try, and even if it hurts me, you know.
For sure.
So Isaac, after you were done fighting and you retired, was there any kind of like identity crisis, like what now? And you know what happens next?
Yeah, so that was huge. There was the identity crisis of not fighting anymore and not knowing who. I don't think I've ever known who I was, like, besides my exterior, you know. So figuring that out, you know, the next step was, well, I got to meet a woman and marry her, because that's what we do in life, right? And that's what I did. So and while that's going on, the whole time I'm using, but trying to keep my use under, like, hidden, which sometimes I did really good, and other times, you know, when I'd be sick in the morning and didn't have drugs, I didn't do very well at all, you know. So there was the getting married and then trying to figure out what I want to do. So I tried to open some gyms. I was thinking about trying to do some acting and stunt work, and I knew how to use my hands, so I did some labor work, but I never knew. I don't think even from when I was a little kid that I never knew what I was gonna be, you know. Like my dad passed away real young, so I figured I was gonna have the same kind of deal, and I would burn out. And when I figured out that I wasn't just gonna ride off in the sunset in a blaze of glory, like, I didn't know what to do with myself, you know. And that's where the use started getting really bad. So that, coupled with my dad got cancer, so that was another great excuse to just go as hard as I could with the drugs, you know.
And you were in New Mexico at the time.
Yeah, in New Mexico. My parents had moved out and retired there, you know, and I had built quite a network of people that I knew, and I just started taking advantage of that in the most negative way possible, and getting really toxic and kind of burning people where I could, and burning relationship. And luckily my wife had a good job, so I never had to live in a van like you, which is nice. But, you know, I was just burning a relationship with her and my mom and dad, and and everything the whole time, you know, as an adult, not as a kid anymore. You know, I'm in my mid 30s or late 30s now doing that, which is that I was still doing as a teenager, but just now with serious consequences, you know, because a daughter's on the line and all kinds of stuff.
Now, how'd you guys meet, you and your wife?
We met on Tinder.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're still married.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. We met at Tinder, and our first date was a Journey concert. So our first date was a Journey concert, and I took her with a guy named Donald Cerrone, who they call the Cowboy, and Cowboy never pulled punches about what he thought about people. And so I think that if anything, I remember going, well, if this chick is ugly, she's going to pay for her own ticket, and we'll just go into the concert, you know. And she wasn't ugly, and she didn't pay for her own ticket, and we're still together. So
I met my wife MySpace.
oh, yeah, good. I'm glad that I don't feel like such a schlub then.
Yeah, dude, I was in one of her friends' like top 8, and she was quite a bit younger, and I looked at her pictures, and I was like, oh, she's beautiful, but she's stoned and drunk in every picture. It looks like there's, you know, we have nothing in common. And she just kept coming, which was kind of not really how she was in real life, but interesting. Your wife stuck through all the BS with you.
Yeah, I think she loved me enough and also is sick enough and codependent enough where I still seemed like a good idea all the way through. Which, again, she's lovely. I think, you know, she's a strong Mexican woman. She's military. She's hard-headed, you know, and I love her for it. But I think that's one of the things that like made it so she kind of stuck with me despite all the other stuff, you know. At one point she was dropping me off the last time she dropped me off at treatment. It was kind of like, I think that's it, and we're gonna get divorced. And then her mom convinced her to stick around because obviously that I loved her. I couldn't quit getting high, you know. The lack of love was never there. It's just I couldn't quit getting high, and it was affecting the family and affecting everything. So again, I don't know if it's, like I said, the codependency or she's just that loyal, but either way, I got real lucky with her. So
It's awesome.
So then you guys have your first child.
well, so she brought a kid to the table. She's my bonus kid. I never thought I was going to have kids, so I got to skip the first 6 years of changing diapers, which is nice, and just have a great daughter now. So she's, you know, her dad's still in the picture, but like she's a great kid, and we have a great relationship, and she's off at college now doing her own life mistakes and loving it.
So, Isaac, what was the, you know, maybe not rock bottom, but was there a moment where you're like, I'm done. I just can't live like this anymore. Like, take us through that. What happened?
So the moment was, you know, so I'd been arrested, and I got arrested with guns and drugs and other people's identities and the stuff that we do when we're using and running and gunning, right? And went to jail, went to treatment, got out, and was lying to my wife still for about another month about my use, you know, trying to convince her I was sober. And just like always happens, I did something stupid, which was lying to her about going to an IOP, an intensive outpatient program, and I hurt myself when I was trying to possibly go do some criminal activity. And while I was doing that, she found out that I was using again, and she gave me the ultimatum of leave the house, like this is it, or get sober. And I remember going, I can't get sober. I mean, I want to, like, you know, even when I was using, like when I was picking up dope, I would still want to get sober, but I just couldn't, you know. So I chose, like, I guess I'll just go, you know. And that was, I think that's that point. I don't know what happened. I think so. I kind of ran away. She called a treatment center again because of the codependency instead of just letting me go. And she said, look, if you go to treatment Monday, we'll try to work things out. Like, I care about you. And at some point we had to talk with the nurse about what keeping me well over the weekend looked like, because they didn't want me detoxing in the house, because I'm kind of a monster when I'm detoxing, you know. And she took me down to the ghettos, like what's called the war zone in Albuquerque, and just dropped me off at the edge of the war zone. And the look of disappointment in her face, because I talk a lot about this woman, but I love her, you know. And the disappointment in her face was really, that was my bottom. It wasn't, I've done a lot of really crazy stuff in my life, but really just seeing the pure disappointment in her face was really the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore, and I'm going to do whatever I need to stay sober. And since then, it's been 7 years. But I wish I had a cool bottom story, but it really was just I was done. You know.
Dude, that's a cool bottom story.
Yeah.
No, it really is.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it really, I think that most of the ones that you hear like that are, you know, you hear the craziness, but I think once I knew I was really done, I was done, you know. I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't have any answers about how to keep doing what I was doing, and I desperately wanted to stop using, but I didn't think I could, and I was just exhausted, you know. And I think that little bit, like that window, that little moment of clarity was just enough to keep me going. And I really did do everything that was asked of me in the treatment center and everything, because I remember still going, I will do whatever I'm told to do, you know, however uncomfortable it is, I'll do it, because I can't do this anymore, you know.
Interesting. Yeah, there's been moments throughout my recovery that were just big turning points, right? I remember when I held my first kid for the first time, and I think like up until then my whole life was always about me. It was never, you know, what can I bring, what can I give, how can I be the best version of myself. But holding my kid for the first time, my oldest daughter, was like, I just knew it wasn't about me anymore.
That's what I like about having a stepkid, is it's still about me.
Yeah.
And I can just run away whenever I need to.
There's been many times where I wanted to run away.
Yeah, and I still have that option. I can just kind of push her off and go, you know? Yeah, and that's what like what we were talking about earlier, everything, not everything, but the recovery aspect of my life isn't an aspect of my life anymore. It's recovery is my life, even though it might not look like it. My thoughts are always on what I'm doing, either to try to be of service to somebody, even though sometimes it doesn't look traditional, and to change into a kind of a less toxic, better human being, you know, without losing some of my edge, you know. So that's what this whole thing has been about, like, you know, repairing relationships with people, even like Scott and my friend Tate. Like, one of my biggest things is I was really to my friend Tate for absolutely no reason, you know. And so now trying to repair that is like, it's something we don't talk often, but like, you know, sitting down with him going, hey, I was a real asshole, man, and this is where we're at, and I just don't want to, you know, I've had some people die recently, and really realizing how short and how not permanent life is really made me kind of go, I don't want to leave here with with bad stuff on my plate, you know. So that's been the whole journey so far.
Super important.
Yeah.
So Isaac, what advice would you give somebody that is stuck in the same place that you were?
The biggest thing that I keep realizing is being stuck there, or if I get stuck now, is until I'm dead, nothing's permanent, you know. Everything that I've done to make these improvements have just been trusting the process, whether it was the program process or whether it was what you guys are telling me, that process, and just making small incremental changes and just keep moving forward small bits at a time, you know. Again, like I've watched people during COVID, I watched a lot of people kill themselves, and that's a very permanent solution for a very non-permanent thing, you know. And so unless you're dead, there's always room that you can move forward. So just don't give up. I mean, that's a big thing, and that's after several relapses and continuing to give up small chunks, you know.
And let me ask you one last thing. If someone is interested in Albuquerque, New Mexico, or really anywhere in the country, can you take anybody and teach them how to do this and teach them how to make well into the six figures?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a salesperson. I wasn't a roofer until recently, but you know, the one thing that I did have is a drive, and that's what I asked of my guys too. You know, I have radio guys who work for me. I have ex-prisoners who work for me. I have an IT guy who works for me. And the whole thing, as long as you have the drive to succeed, like, it can be taught. This can be, and that's again what I like about this, is it can be replicated pretty easily. And you guys have, one is still doing the structure to make it easily to replicate for us to take it to somebody and go, all you need is to push, you know, because you need your mind to be a little bit strong, and you need some push.
And anybody in the New Mexico area, who do they call? Who do they reach out to? How can we get a hold of you if they're interested in the opportunity?
Call the office. The number there is 505-456-7663. It goes right to the phone that I'm still holding, and I will talk to you and we'll get going. I mean, that's what I want to do. So,
Thanks so much, Isaac. We appreciate your time today.
J like the letter, I'm making several waves. I know the mission the same. I made a splash, now all of my passes last like running a race with Usain. I keep it coming like this a buffet. And if I'm stumbling, I'm in the grave. Never gon' fumble it, I get them back and I run with it. Gunning it, gunning it, gunning it, gunning it. Murray with the legs, all about finesse, I am not impressed. I don't need a rash coming in with last, then you see the flash. Elohim with the melody and the kiss supply the breath. 70, keep it heavenly, everybody get the bread.